Good afternoon. I'm not sure where you are from, so I guess have a good day. It's better. I'm Anastasia and I will be your host, but we still have some time before to start, so let's wait patiently. And remember to have, during the presentation, to have your microphones muted, so there will be a better reception for you guys. I'm going to give my voice over to Andreas. Andreas, are you ready?
I am ready, indeed.
So I hope that that the quick and short presentation about what we do as a company was helpful for you. And now for the main event, Andreas, I'm giving the rest to you. Your microphone is muted.
So that's better now.
Yes.
And I would like to share my screen. I'm Andreas Grabitz. Please, if you have any questions to me, just say Andy. I think it's easier for most of you than to pronounce Andreas. That's a bit complicated. I'm Andy. I'm working for Eurofins since 2005, so since roughly 16 years now. I've been involved in different functions within Eurofins, and since 2018, so around 2 years now, I'm heading the Department of Packaging Materials in Hamburg. So I'm located in the northern part of Germany. Which we call a horizontal regulation. Horizontal regulation means this is a bit like the picture of a house. Yeah, you see here is the roof of the house, and the roof of all food contact materials is made by 2 regulations which cover all food contact materials. And this roof are 2 framework regulations, the 1935-2004 and the GMP regulation 2023 from 2006. These 2 regulations are applicable to all of the material. Is this plastic? Is this paper? Is this wood, cork, glass, rubber, etc.? No difference. This is for all materials. And below that, we have legislation, we have specific measures for certain materials. The most important one and the best known is, of course, the plastic regulation. We will go into much detail about the plastic regulation later on. We have a regulation, a directive for ceramics. We have one for elastomers, where we have a limit for the release of nitrosamines. We have one directive for coatings which are applied on the inner side of metal cans. So a lot of food packed in metal cans, this has such a white coating on the inner side, and for this coating this regulation is applicable. And we have one for regenerated cellulose. So these are specific measures for specific certain materials, while the framework regulation and the GMP regulation is applicable for all of these materials. And you can see in between, we have some materials where we don't have a specific regulation. For instance, this is the case for lacquers, for paper, for printing inks, for silicons, metals, and for adhesives. For these materials, in the EU, we have no legal requirements. But these materials are covered by the framework regulation and also by the GMP regulation, of course. So for all of these materials, for paper, for inks, and so on, these 2 regulations, framework and GMP, are also applicable. That's very important to understand. But for these materials, we don't have a specific law which lays down requirements for paper or for printing inks, but only the very general ones from framework and from the GMP regulation. Before I go into the detail of these two regulations, I want to explain what is a regulation and what is a directive. Probably you remember I mentioned already the plastic is a regulation while the ceramics is a directive. It's a huge difference and it is important to understand. An EU regulation is binding for all the EU member states without any national implementation. So here is one example. This is the plastic regulation, and the plastic regulation is a law, a national law, an EU law, which is the same in all EU member states. So from Ireland to Greece and from Latvia to Spain and Portugal, exactly the same, or in every of the 27 EU member states. While in contrast to that, the EU directives need to be implemented into each member state. So here we had the old plastic directive or the ceramic directive for as another example. These directives are not applicable automatically, but Germany has implemented it into his law. France has done so, the United Kingdom, Spain, Italy, and so on and so on. Each member state needs to implement these EU directives into their national laws. Second one, you remember the roof of my building, yes? So two regulations being horizontal, being applicable for all materials, is the GMP regulation. The GMP regulation also has a subject matter, and here the regulation is very, very easy. It is just referencing to the framework regulation. So all of the scope which I explained for the 1935 is also valid, is also true for the GMP. All materials are covered. And the most important article is here, Article 5. You need to have in place a quality assurance system. Actually, the quality assurance system must take into account the size of the business operator as not to be an excessive burden on the business. That's really, really interesting. The EU Commission says that any quality assurance, any good manufacturing process must consider that a small company can't do all and everything. That's simply impossible. There are so many chemicals being present in a printing ink or which can migrate that a small company can't of that. So we must take into account that small and medium-sized companies have reduced capabilities, reduced persons to cover all of these good manufacturing practices. But Article 5.2 says that any starting material, any raw material you are using for a film, for a bottle, or for a cardboard must be selected so that it complies with the rules which are applicable for it. Or say in other words, you are only allowed to use raw materials which are suitable for food contact. Let's take an example from, let's say, from the lacquers. Yeah, you print on a material, then you usually also apply a lacquer to protect the printing film. If you do so, the ink and the lacquer must be a food contact lacquer, because only a food contact lacquer ensures that the finished product is safe. If you use a lacquer, which is, for instance, intended for automotive, then it will not be food safe. So this is what Article 5 says. Please only use raw materials which are suitable for food contact, nothing else. And now in Article 7, we have something very interesting regarding the documentation. So you need to do some testing, you need to do some documentation from your raw materials, from your suppliers. You need to have all of these on stock. But you are not obliged, it is not required by the legislation that you disclose, that you give all of this information to your customer, but only to the authorities. So your customer has the right, or you have the obligation to provide a declaration of compliance, but not all of the documentation with raw material data sheets, with test reports, and so on, and so on, and so on. All of this stuff is yours. The customer needs to get a declaration of compliance. That's it. Okay, a brief summary about GMP. The GMP has a reference to the framework regulation. So it has the same scope and it covers all materials in contact with food, being plastic, being paper, being lacquers, wood, cork, silicons, metals, and so on. Everything is covered. They mandatorily require a traceability and a continuous good quality of the material. They implement a responsibility, so you are responsible for the safety, if not delegated. They forbid a general disclaimer that's not acceptable, and they also request or recommend to consider NIOS product. And we have the proportionality, so small companies can do less quality assurance, big companies need to do more in quality assurance. Okay, that's here you see myself again and my team. And Natalia, I think we have a bit more of time. If there are questions, I'm more than happy to answer if possible.